everybody, welcome to MNB World Talk Show's brand new episode. Well, today we've invited a very intelligent and persuasive lady who could move the whole Mongolian government at the age of 27 to organize Nomads in the Digital Age International Conference this year. Well, she is Miss Bolor-Erdene and she's a co-founder of Access Solutions LLC. Well, thank you for receiving our invitation.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. That's actually very persuasive.
That's actually very persuasive. It is true, right? I mean,
Hope so.
yeah, you hope so. You've done a lot by at your age. I mean, and it's very your resume is very intimidating, actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you graduated your secondary school at 14 years of
Yes.
years old, right?
Yeah.
And can you share the most memorable memories of your childhood?
So
Just first thing in your mind.
well, I remember
What kind of
studying.
kid you were?
That's the only thing I did for many years when I was in secondary school, high school. But I remember one of the memories I have from secondary school is that my parents used to ask me, and they would say like, "Don't go to school today. Just relax, rest," because they know I study way too much. And it's like that would be exactly opposite from other parents. They would be like, "Just today, stay
Really?
home. We can tell them you're sick or something." But that's like I would want to go to school and study, and that's something I'd
So
love
you
to
loved
do.
studying
I did love
rather than
studying.
just going on the streets playing with kids?
I didn't have many friends, to be honest. I had very few friends who are from the apartment that I grew up in. So it's the whole apartment. You know how our friendships are in an apartment. So most of my friends were from my neighbors, from my neighborhood. So I didn't have many friends at school because they were older than me, and
Okay. Because yes.
yeah, I skipped 3 years in high school and secondary school. So, but I did love studying.
But I mean, the most interesting to me is you were 14 years old, and then where did this big drive come from? I mean, why did you want to study that fast and that hard?
Well, that would come back to my very early time of my childhood. I started my elementary school in the countryside where I'm from, which is Bolor-Erdene. My parents are from there, and then my father got promoted. He decided to go to the city, and we moved. So I left many of my friends behind me and moved to the new town, coming from countryside. It was a bit hard, you know. Now I remember, I think I had a bit of trauma at the time, which I didn't know was a trauma, but I thought like I was outside of the circle. So I spent my time studying, but I loved studying anyway. So I spent so much time on studying. I loved English, so I used to study English, listen English music, write down the lyrics and try to translate that, etc., etc. And my brother is 4 years older than me, so I kind of got to study with him. So I would be studying his program in school and would be doing some of his homework and stuff like that.
So you were a freak.
Well, I was a nerd.
you was a nerd.
I was
and
a nerd.
I mean, I get that feeling that the studying was your comfort zone by the time when you were little, and then you got into it. You addicted to studying, I guess.
I mean, I thought it was.
And you loved it. I mean, that's
yeah,
good.
I loved it. But I mean, you know how you solve math problem, for example. It's a challenge, and it's a small battle with yourself. And I loved the feeling of winning at the time, just like solving the math problem and having the correct answer. That was, I think, something I satisfied to do.
Well, after that, you you studied business administration in Korea, and then you went to Oxford University to study public policy.
Yes.
Oxford University public policy. Well, you have to tell our audience what does public policy major do? and why did you choose this major?
So when I finished my undergrad at the age of 18, I started my career at the Asian Development Bank, one of their funded projects, and there I learned about gender and social issues. I worked as a gender and social specialist. From there on, I worked for Millennium Challenge Account of Mongolia, World Bank, and other organizations. And one of the things I noticed was that we don't have policy evaluation in Mongolia. So you know how unstable the politics is in Mongolia. So so when we were doing some research, one of the things that strongly hit me was that some governments come along and they make decisions, but the consequences of their decision-making process comes after they left their office. So, for example, if we're happy today, maybe it's the decision that were made by previous government or previous politicians, etc., etc. So the policy making process is a long process, and the impact of this process comes after many years to people's lives. So that was something I was interested in, and I read a lot, and I wanted to learn more about it. And that's the reason I chose public policy, because that's the public policy.
That's the public policy.
But the major I wanted to choose was how do we evaluate the impact of policy making in short and long-term process. Yeah.
Well, cool. Now I know. Now I know what you do, and our audience as well. So, as a tradition, we show your CV, who you are on papers, and with your photos. So, yeah, let's show who is Miss Bolor-Erdene Batsingal on papers and photos as well. Well, your CV is very intimidating. All the projects that you have done. I mean, I have to give you that. I mean,
Thank you very much.
I mean, it's very impressive resume.
Thank you.
So you have so many hats. For example, you are doing a consultant at one of the Australian branches of World Bank Group, and you are co-founder of Access Solutions LLC, etc. What part of your job do you like or love the most?
So,
do you like doing research? I mean,
well, research, I wouldn't blame anyone who doesn't like doing research, because sometimes it's really boring. We have to be honest, especially for those who are watching and deciding their major, for example, if there are young people watching. But it's really boring process sometimes. But the part I love the most is that when you do very good qualified research, and that research result is being used for right purpose, that's the thing I do love the most, and that's why I do what I do.
Well, you organized Nomads in the Digital Age conference successfully, and you initiated it. You talked with the government of Mongolia. So what are the results, and what's the process? I mean, what's the aftermath now?
So to start with, I want to explain what the project is for. So I had an opportunity to work with the university I graduated, which is University of Oxford, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So what we did was that we implemented this project, Mongolia in the Digital Age, and the aim of the project was to identify what's the current assessment of Mongolian digital technology, and what do we do to make it fully digitalized nationwide. So that was the whole purpose behind it. And as you know, MNB World did really a good job broadcasting the whole event. And as you know, we had developed 6 strategies for the government. So we partnered with the government of Mongolia as well, and they were really nice to have us work with them on this, and very supportive. And now we're trying to take some actions from the strategy.
I mean,
so
action is the most important
Exactly.
part, because in Mongolia we have so many international conferences lately for the last 5 years, and I mean, you know, I want to see more actions too.
Yeah, so exactly, that's why we're working really hard with the government to do some actions, to take some actions. And just for the people watching, for ICT index, we're on 14th in Asia, which is not bad, but there are many countries who introduce robots to the kindergarten programs, for example. So just looking at your neighbors, it's really going fast, and we don't have right to calm down. We really need to take actions much faster than we're supposed to. So, which is why I'm working with the government to take some actions on this and introduce more e-governance and more digital literacy to Mongolia.
Okay, so what's the closest action that I could see, step I could see in close future? That's being implemented in the government sphere.
I mean, I can't really take the position of the government here because I'm not
But I mean,
the
you have the information,
government
no?
stuff here, but I do have the information. So I think actually we do have to give the government credit on this because they're trying to introduce this operator system. So instead of going to, for example, registration office in Zong'an, you don't have to go there. You will have one operator, like a bank operator, and you can take all the public service from there. So you don't have to go to different offices, etc., etc. And also, there was this extended government team visited Estonia, which is the #1 country in e-governance, and we're expecting more work from that trip and more collaboration with Estonian e-governance academy.
Wow, okay, it's going well. I mean, it sounds like it's going well. I mean, for example, a smart card, the introduction for the buses, etc. Mongolia, when we decide to do something, we could do really fast, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then adapt really fast
Exactly.
to the technologies.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things we have to make sure is that we coordinate and we calibrate very well, because of lack of coordination, there have been many mistakes that we don't want to repeat over and over again.
Yes.
So that's something I'm also personally trying to do.
Well, next we want to show some footages and videos we MNB World have taken from the Nomads in the Digital Age conference, international conference. So let's take a look at that. And she's even given some interviews there.
During this project, we organized a series of dialogue sessions in four directions, 4 topics. One was infrastructure, human capital, startup financing, and regulation environment in Mongolia. And each and every single of this discussion, we wanted to make sure that we have result out of the discussion. So instead of just identifying what's the problem, we wanted to bring the stakeholders to discuss what's the solution. And you can be very judgmental of my solution, but you have to agree on something at the end. So the same concept goes with this conference. We have many high-level officials. We're very happy to have the Prime Minister here. We're very happy to have greetings from Melinda Gates, which means they're paying so much attention to Mongolia. So as a result of this project, I hope that we will have potential collaboration, and I hope this conference will be starting point, which is why we brought international stakeholders, maybe potential investors, startup companies, academics to work with the government, etc., etc. And each and every single of these organizations were briefed on who you should talk during the conference and stuff like that. But as a result of this project, from my team, we wanted to initiate a project that will be more impactful. So this is more like a research project, but we want to deliver the digital skills. And this is the start of that project. So right after the conference, our expectation is that there will be collaborations people will be working together. That's the concrete measurement. But there will be more impact that the result will be out in a few years, maybe in 10 years. So for example, if there is a company working with Oxford to create curriculum for students to learn IT technology or digital technology, the result will be out when the student graduates and gets employed. So it's a long-term thing. But I think in the short term, we're expecting more collaborations, stakeholders working together. And me and my team are very, very passionate that technology can be the very big factor for Mongolian development. Not only Mongolia, but in developing countries in general. But we want to make sure that Mongolia takes advantage of this technology development rather than just going as it flows.
Well, I have to thank you on behalf of MNB World for initiating and making the Nomads in the Digital Age International Conference happen, like really. It's very helpful for Mongolian future, Mongolian promotion, etc. Well, let's switch our topic a little bit and let's talk about some personal stuff. And well, you're not married from our study here, and Mongolians usually do get married early, and you're not married at all. So what do you think about marriage?
I think
on that topic.
Marriage is the biggest decision you can make in your life, throughout your whole life. So for marriage, I think my parents have set me really nice marriage standards, and they're really nice couple, and it's very healthy family that I grew up in, and that's something I want to make sure that I do have in my life. So for marriage, but one of the things I am fond of is you have to make sure that it's time that you get married. So there are some things that you need to prepare. You want to know yourself first. You want to travel, maybe whatever you want to do. I think you should do it alone first.
But how would you know, okay, I'm ready to marry?
I mean, one of my friends told me that you never get ready for marriage. It just happens, whatever happens. But time to time, I realized that there are so many things that I don't know about myself. So, and I think many women make that mistake, just thinking that the man has to know about yourself, about you, while you don't know about yourself. So, I mean, for some of my friends who got married when they were like 18, they're growing up together. So they're deciding who are the people they're becoming together, right? But for people like me, I've traveled a lot alone and stuff like that. So I want to make sure that I am ready to, you know, sacrifice some of the leverage freedoms I have, and really have a marriage that's worth the trade-off.
Wow, now you're talking business. Whew, that's so hard. Well, anyways, I mean, my perspective is quite different than that, because, I mean, it can differ, because you said you have to know yourself first, right? Do we ever get to know ourselves fully? Do you always study or find something new from your universe, right?
Yeah, of course. You finish discovering yourself, and the day after that you die. So, but I mean, for a certain stage, you need to know yourself, I think, and that would make your marriage life much better. Okay. I guess that's just my
Well, I
opinion.
wish you happy marriage.
Thank you very much.
In close future, whatever.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Okay, what's your biggest weakness? You have to be honest. Don't tell, oh, I'm too kind. I don't want that kind of answer.
Well, that's...
Okay.
Well, I think now this is something I'm also discovering about myself, is that I get stressed too easily. So Now, you know, as you mentioned, I have so many hats and I have so much responsibilities. I have a small team, and I am in charge of their families because I'm paying them salaries and stuff like that. So for so many things like this, I get stressed so easily. And these days I'm trying to learn how to meditate and all these things and take things not casually, but like, you know, prioritize your important stuff. Yeah. So these days I'm just understanding that I am maybe getting stressed too easily, and maybe on some things I should be very calm.
So psychologically you are being weak, that's what you're basically saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So you
something
have
I'm
to-
discovering these days. Yeah.
Okay, well, you also love traveling. Your biggest hobby is traveling. So we have taken some video from her to show you guys about her travel photos and videos. Well, let's check out which countries she's been to.
So traveling is something that I picked up in the last few years, and since then I've really been enjoying doing that. I would say it's rather than a hobby, it's something I enjoy to do and something that changes how I think. I've traveled to over 30 countries now, which is not much, but I'm planning to travel to more developing countries. From the 30 countries, most of the countries I traveled are European countries, the US, UK, all those developed countries, Australia, etc. But from this year, I'm trying to travel to countries, emerging markets, and post-Soviet countries, for example. So I'm hoping that I would learn how hard they're working for their vision, mission, etc., as a country. So this is something I would love to explore from this year. Every time I travel, I like to interact with local people, and rather than doing touristic stuff, I'd like to talk to people and really learn how they live and how they do things differently from us. And this is something that adds value to the way I think, the way I work.
Wow, you've been to almost 20 something, 25 countries?
25, 6,
25, 6 countries. What do you love? What do you most love about traveling?
I love to know how people live outside of Mongolia. So, I mean, there are so many common things. As a human, we do similarly, no matter where you are. And there are things that other people do differently outside of Mongolia. So that's something I used to think that I love traveling because it, you know, it's like makes me think about something. But these days, I think I just travel to know how other people think, how other people live, and it's really interesting and it's amazing. Yeah.
What was the most interesting country you traveled? The first country,
It's Samoa Island.
Samoa Island.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's very small island, and compared to Samoa Island, Mongolian population is big because they have 200,000 people there. It's a very small
how
island
small, okay.
country. And you know the famous actor Rock Johnson, the big guy, he's from Samoa Island. So people in Samoa Island, they're huge. They're like 2
really?
meters height. It's really big, and their culture is really similar to Mongolia. They have extended big families, and they visit each other, and how they work I found was really interesting. And it's beautiful. They don't have much infrastructure there, but the nature is just beautiful. And the fact that they have less tourists, that's the fact I really loved. And I went there for the World Bank work, World Bank project. And also World Bank opened me many doors to travel to other countries as well.
Well, now I have to ask you the most challenging times of your life. I mean, these kind of times, these kind of experiences make us human beings. We all have these hardships and times, you know. So can you share?
Yeah, sure. I think, when you overcome the challenge, you stop thinking that was a challenge. So that's something
exactly.
I do all the time. Like sometimes I struggle a lot, and when I overcome it, I don't even consider it was a challenge. So maybe that's bad. But the first few months at Oxford University, that was a big challenge because even though I could speak English and understand English perfectly, just the academic quality and qualification was really high, and I am expected to know many theories and all these things that I wasn't taught in Mongolia. So that was a big transition. But every time when I do transition in my career, I found that there are some challenges that I need to overcome. But now, these days, as I am discovering myself, one of the things I loved about challenge is the process. So you asked me before, what do you like about your job? I said I like the result. But for challenges, now I start to like the process, how I'm handling the process. And I think the process is the thing you should remember. Yeah.
So you're having fun with the process now.
I am now these days having fun.
That's
with
good.
the
I mean, that's a real personal development, isn't it?
I hope so.
I think
yeah.
it sounds like it. Well, anyways, the time is ticking for us. We only have 30 minutes, and my last question is about future. It is a traditional question. So, what do you dream for Mongolia and for yourself? But give me some detailed image.
So for Mongolia, the image I am having and I'm working for is quite clear. It's fully digitalized country that we're leveraging Mongolian mind, which is a big property for Mongolians, and really selling it outside of the Mongolia. And that's the future I'm imagining for Mongolia. And knowing that we have very good IQ and math skills and all these things, these are very good fundamental qualification for technology development. And as you can see, there are many Mongolian guys being very successful in Silicon Valley, in Seattle, in London, etc., etc. So we want to use this opportunity to really fasten the development of the country, and that's something I am working really hard, and I hope that there will be even small result, good result coming out of my work and the team I have behind me as well. For my personal development, I want to just take a small project and make the most out of it, so you can see how much impact you're making there. And I want to, exactly as you said, I want to have something measurable that I can see, okay, this is how much impact I've done here. And then move on to a bit bigger scale one. But before, when we talk about our dreams, it's very vague and it's big, and you can't really measure anything. And because I've learned about measurement and accuracy and all these things, I want to make sure that even small project, I'm making some positive impact. And from there on, leveraging that skill I gained from that experience, I would move into the bigger scale project.
Okay. Fair enough. And thank you for coming to our studio to give this interview, make this conversation with me.
Thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, this has been Miss Bolor-Erdene Batsingal. She's a co-founder of Access Solutions LLC. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and we will see you with our next episode next week. Until then, goodbye.